Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar on Adobe Acrobat DC. Today's webinar is going to cover helpful tips for instructors when using Adobe Acrobat DC. And so just to tell you a little bit about the session, my name is Susie Johannes. I am a technology instructor here at KUIT. And in addition to that, I am also a master's student. So some of these tips are things that I see in course materials that are provided or in my own materials that I provide to my instructors. So that kind of helped inform today's session. Just a couple of notes before we get into the overview of what will be covered in today's session. First, you may have noticed this, but we are recording today's session. After the presentation, we will put the recording on our YouTube channel, and that's at youtube.com/KUTechnology. If you haven't checked that out, you may find it to be interesting. We have a lot of tutorials up there. We're putting all of our tutorials up there, all of our past recorded webinars. So we're starting to have a lot of good content up there specific to students, faculty, and staff at the University of Kansas. Just a few things as far as navigating the meeting space. First thing, I think most people have their microphones muted, which is great. So ideally, you know, if you're not presenting, the meeting best practice is to have your microphone muted. We'll have some pauses during the session where you can ask questions. You're welcome to do that through the chat or by asking them through the if you have a microphone and unmuting yourself. Second, you may find that you'll see the presentation better if you maximize or expand the entire meeting window, and so that's that square button in the top right. And then I did mention asking questions through the chat. There's two panels that would be helpful for you to open. The first is the chat panel, and the second is the Manage Participants or the Participants panel. You should see both of those icons in the lower toolbar of this meeting. And what happens is when you expand those, you'll be able to view any chat that's happening at this time. You should also be able to use the nonverbal feedback. So just to test this out, if you have that participants panel open, you should see these icons as they're displayed here. If you see all of that, if you go ahead and select yes, that will make me know that everyone's seeing what I'm seeing. And they got the participants panel open. So this will be kind of nice as we go. Periodically, we'll check in just to make sure, and I'll ask you, you know, click yes if you got it, click no if you have more questions, and then Tennille will help us by clearing out those once we get a pretty good feel for things. All right, so just a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. We will talk first just about Adobe Acrobat DC and how it is different from the free version of Adobe Acrobat, as well as how you can get it on your work machine and or personal machine. And then we'll get into a series of example files. In the first file, we'll talk about basic alterations to PDFs, so how you rotate pages, how you can reorder, remove pages, how to make text searchable if you've got a scan maybe of a book or an old journal article or something like that. We'll get into another example where we'll talk about more options for altering PDFs. So we'll do some cropping of a scanned PDF. We'll look at bookmarks, adding headers and footers. And then we'll also look at just some general scanning and printing tips with Adobe PDF that could help the end result of your PDFs that you're distributing. So before we get into the about, I'd like to go ahead and launch a poll here. And so hopefully everyone can see this poll that's up on the screen. I want to see what you all are most interested in learning about Adobe Acrobat. We have here options for page reordering or removing of rotating pages, cleaning up, scans, adding headers, and that sort of thing. So if you would, it's been a while since I did a poll here. vote on one of those options. Awesome. So it looks like a few people have voted. We've gotten a pretty good split. Okay, cool. And it's pretty nice too because let's see here. I guess we'll go ahead and end this poll, and then can we share the results? There we go. So this is pretty nice. We're going to cover all these things, so this is great. And then I'll spend a little bit extra time on the cleaning up scans, making text searchable options. Perfect. So let's see, just a little bit of an introduction into Adobe Acrobat DC. So Adobe Acrobat, this version used to be called Adobe Acrobat Pro. It's now been renamed to Adobe Acrobat DC, and I believe DC stands for Document Cloud. So really, it's the software application from Adobe that allows you to not only view PDFs, but also create PDFs, manipulate PDFs. So like when we talk about reordering, deleting pages, changing the content of the PDF, that sort of thing. And then we can also print and manage files with that PDF format. So it has more options than the free Adobe Acrobat Reader. So again, one of the strengths of PDF, of using that file type, is because that Adobe Acrobat Reader is free for anyone to download and use. And so when you have a PDF file, it can pretty much kind of lock down your document in a way for people who are just using that everyday free Adobe Acrobat Reader. Now, as you'll see today, it will be possible for us with the Adobe Acrobat DC version to really alter PDFs in a way that most people wouldn't know is possible if they just have that free Adobe Acrobat Reader. We can do things like comment, review, we could digitally sign, encrypt PDFs. I should make a note there with digital signatures that they're not currently supported by KUIT as being one of the approved signature methods on campus. But those are all things that Adobe talks about being possible with Acrobat DC. And they're used for, final documents, legal documents, etc. I mean, today, because we're talking about this in the context of the classroom, we're kind of talking more about, course materials or possibly assignments and that sort of thing. How do I get Adobe Acrobat DC? Well, if you are a faculty or staff person, you can get Adobe Acrobat DC as part of the Creative Cloud at no cost. So KU has a negotiated license with Adobe, and that allows all faculty and staff to get Adobe Acrobat and actually the entire Adobe Creative Cloud at no cost. There's some more information available, technology.ku.edu/software/Adobe-Acrobat, or you can get to that whole section by going to software.ku.edu. But basically with that, you can download and install Adobe Creative Cloud on up to 2 machines. Ideally, one would be your work machine, and the other one could be your personal machine. So we have instructions on the knowledge base on how to do that. I'll send those instructions out with a follow-up, but that's basically how faculty and staff can get it. I will also mention that licensing gives us access to the mobile apps. So there is a few different Adobe Acrobat related mobile apps, but basically all of the Adobe apps are able to be used to the full extent because of our licensing. Okay, so for your students, there is a student rate for Adobe Creative Cloud provided by Adobe. That would give access to the whole Creative Cloud, and it's currently somewhere around $20 per month for the first year, and then it goes up to $30 per month after that. It is also possible just to purchase Adobe Acrobat DC on a monthly or annual basis. But just those are the options there. Students can also, I don't have it on the slide here, but students can also go to any lab and they should be able to see that software on the machine that they're working on. So pretty much all of our public labs should have that installed. And then finally, GTAs, there's a little bit of gray area there. If you will talk to your local support techs, it could be possible for you to get Adobe Acrobat DC. So just talk with them and they can work with KUIT to see if there's access available. All right, so we're going to start to get into the practice files. First, we're just going to take a look at viewing PDFs and then interface. We'll look at rotating pages, rearranging, copying, extracting, deleting pages, and then finally the basics of making text searchable. So I'm going to switch over to my first file here. And so here you should be seeing on my screen a PDF that is an article. So just a little bit of kind of navigation around here. One of the biggest things that kind of trips people up with this newest version of Acrobat DC, here I have 3 different PDFs open, but then there's these kind of static panels that stay here. So if I switch to home, this can be a little bit confusing because now it's taking me to recent documents, opening files on my computer, that sort of thing. To get back to my document, I would have to click on that tab up here at the top. The other thing is true with tools. So there's a whole host of tools that aren't necessarily included by default in the options. And so this kind of static tab up here, tools, shows us all of that. But a lot of times what I'll see when people start off with this is you'll kind of get lost on home or tools. And just by clicking on the name of your document, you should be taken back there. There is a file menu up here, just like with all other kind of software. We'll be seeing some of those options as we go. And then there's this toolbar right here that can be a little bit customized. So we have some common options like saving, printing, that sort of thing. Here we have these options here. This little icon will allow us to actually move most of those options to this bar at the bottom. So a couple options there. You can click this to have it go back up here if you don't want that bar at the bottom, or you can click this to make that go back to the bottom. What I like to point out here is just some quick options for viewing. My big hits here are just these options for page viewing. So a lot of times when I open up PDFs, it's just showing me part of the first page. I like to come and use this drop down and say fit one full page so I can see the entirety of the page. There's other options for zooming in, zooming out here, or you can, click zoom in, zoom out in order to zoom in and zoom out of the page. The last thing dealing with navigation, this has changed with this newest version of Adobe. The extra panels that you used to normally see are kind of hidden along the left and the right. So I like to tell people to expand these panels by clicking on these kind of really hidden arrows on the left and on the right. And that allows you to see all of your panel options as well as all of your tools that show up on the right. So we're going to get started here just talking about how to alter pages and kind of reorder, possibly do that sort of thing. So for all of this, the biggest tip or trick is that you really want to be looking at this panel that's showing up here at the top, which is the page thumbnails panel. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Now, with that, I get to see all the pages that are included as part of this document. And so I also have quick kind of tips here, like I can, well, if I had a page selected, I can rotate, that sort of thing, delete. So first thing first, I want to talk about rotating pages. Now, there is this option under View where you can just rotate your view. However, that's not a permanent option. So if I rotate my view, save this, send it to somebody else, they could still open it and it would appear like this for them. So really what we're looking at today are things that you can do to make your PDFs kind of easier to read for your end user, I guess, or your students. So here, what we want to do is we want to rotate all these pages. Now I could select one by one, come up here and say rotate. Or when we're talking about these pages, as long as I'm clicked over here in the page thumbnail panel, I could do a Control A or a Select All. So that's Control A. On a Mac, it would be Command A, and that would select all of my pages. And now when I click on that rotate button, it just rotates everything so that it's in kind of reading orientation. I should point out also there's different ways to get to the same options. So I could right click in that area and I could get to a rotate pages option that would allow me to do some of the same things. All right, the big thing here is after you make these changes to your document, you always want to come here and say File and Save, either saving over this file or saving as a copy. So I'll go ahead and do Save As. Just practice what I preach here. All right. In this case here, I do want to point out, even though we don't really need to do this sort of thing within this document, it is possible to copy pages, reorder pages this way. So just talking about reordering, again, I don't really need to do this here, but I can drag these pages within the page thumbnail view to reorder any of these pages. If I want to delete a page or multiple pages, I could select the page and select the trash can. If I want to select multiple pages, I can either select the first page, hold down the Shift key and select the last page, which will select the series of pages. So for example, if I wanted to delete pages 1 through 3, I could select page 1, hold down Shift, select page 3, and then click delete, and that would delete everything. The other option is if I just want to select maybe page 1 and then maybe page 3, but skip page 2, I can hold down the Control key, and that allows me to just jump over pages and make individual selections. Then I could say delete or something like that. Also, what works within here is, we talked about right now using Control when you select. You can also use the Control key or the Command key on a Mac in order to copy. So right now I use Control when I selected those. And now if I hold down Control while I drag and drop, I can actually copy those 2 pages and I just drag them to the end. Oops, so now I have page 7 and 8. I'm going to go ahead and do a Shift Select and just delete those extra pages that I added. Okay, the last thing here having to do with just page selection and that sort of thing. If you have, maybe just a subset of pages that you want to be read or something like that, as long as you can, let me do this. As long as you can see your desktop, from the page thumbnail view, you can select a selection of pages and you can just drag and drop those onto the desktop, which will always, it's always titled Untitled Extract Pages, but it allows you to just quickly grab a selection of pages from your overall PDF to make an extract. All right. So those are all the powers of the page thumbnail panel. Again, you get to the full options also by right-clicking in that area. Now, when we're talking about using these articles for courses, it may be possible that your students are only reading these articles online. This is an example of a scanned PDF, and the reason why we can tell that is if I try to select some text on the page, I can't. It's just allowing me to select the entire page or like kind of like a box. I'm not able to actually select the text. The same would be true if I tried to like highlight. It doesn't, it allows me to highlight, but it's not allowing me to like select the text, and I'm just able to just draw wherever I want. So one really helpful thing for your students as you're making these course materials available, which is so awesome to do, is to use something called enhancing scans. So with enhanced scans, and I should point out, this is one of the first ones that we've seen along here. So all of these are along the right are our tools. Enhanced scans should be there by default. When you click one of these tools, it provides this secondary toolbar. So now we have the Enhanced Scans toolbar. There's a few things we can do here. One, if we just want to like make the scan document look better, there's this Enhanced Scan Document, which will slowly work through the document, improving like the contrast and how it looks. As part of this, we can say Recognize Text and then say Enhance. So those are all the default options there using the Enhanced Scan option. So it's just quickly kind of moving through the document using text recognition. And so now that it's complete, what we can see is when I'm hovering over this document, I don't just see like a blue box. I can actually select the text now. And if I wanted to, I could highlight it, I could copy and paste it, that sort of thing. It's all now selectable. The same option is available under Recognize Text. When you use this option, it's the same sort of thing, only gives you more drop downs for different languages, how to just do certain pages, that sort of thing. So Enhanced Scans and Recognize Text have some of the same features. If you want to have more control over the text recognition, the Recognize Text has a few more features. So I do want to point out one more cool thing about this, but in order to do this, I need to open my beginning file. So what's also cool about this is, like, you know, the word ethics appears many times throughout this document. Right now, this is the original I went back to. And if I try to do a find, which is usually Control F, or here you can see Edit Find. In the original scan, if I just try to look for edit, it doesn't like tell me that anything's available. It actually prompts me, do you want to run text recognition and make the text accessible? I'm going to say no, because we're going to go back to our file. However, on this one that I just ran the text recognition on, now if I do a Control F to find, it'd be Command F on Mac, and I say ethics, I can really scan the document to see where mentions of those words are. So again, this is super nice for students because most likely the students in the course would just have the free reader version and they wouldn't be able to do this text recognition feature. They would be able to highlight, but the text would have to be first converted like we've done here. So I want to pause there because those are some of the big concepts here as far as Adobe Acrobat. We looked at rotating pages, possibly removing pages, the general view of the document, and then also how to convert that text to being recognized, and that highlighting feature and finding feature. Questions, comments there. If you feel like you got it and you're ready to move on, you can do either the yes or I believe there's the thumbs up. Awesome. So we're getting some yeses. Sounds like people are kind of good with this section. So that's great. Let's now look at our next file. So in this next option, we have another scan. So I'm going to switch to that tab. Again, another article. So here what we're seeing, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on, you know, just like we saw before, really helpful. On the left side here, your panels, and then the page thumbnail view. So I'm kind of just scrolling through the document, taking a look at the different pages. Now in the case of this one, the text has been converted so it is recognizable. The only thing in this one is that because of the way this has been scanned, there's kind of a large black area over here that's possibly a waste of toner and a waste of space. So I do want to talk through a little bit about how we can edit this, crop it, potentially add more information, that sort of thing. All of those options are over here under Edit PDF. So when we're talking about editing PDFs, we're really talking about altering the content of the PDF. And you may notice as we do this, whatever hasn't been converted is now converting to editable text and images. So yet again, a third way to recognize the text is just to try to edit it. So up here we have options for editing the text, adding images, link, crop pages, that sort of thing. We're going to first address this black area on the side by cropping the pages to crop that area out. So I'm going to go ahead and select crop pages. When I get that, I get this little crosshair on my screen. And now what I can do is I can just click and drag to just capture the page area of the scan. I'm just going to alter that a little bit. Now, it's a little bit confusing because it doesn't really say what to do now. And I was on this page. And then that gives me the full menu options. So the big thing here, I pretty much cropped my page how I want it to be. The big thing here is I say page range. Now the default will be just to crop this one page. However, because I kind of scanned through there already, I'm pretty sure that I can do everything from the second page all the way to the 23rd page. So I'm going to go ahead and say from 2 to 23 and then click OK. And now just like that, it's taken off all that extra area along the side. Probably could have cropped in just a little bit more in some of the cases. In the case of this page, the first page, I could, if I wanted to, come here, say crop pages, and then just crop. Maybe I'll just crop the cover. So again, I say crop, I draw my box, the return, and is now just saying from 1 to page 1. That's exactly what I want, and then I'll say OK. So again, just like before, we'd have to do a file, save, or save as if we wanted to give it a new name in order to actually save the changes that we're making to this PDF. All right, and you know, when we go to print, let's look at that. So we have you know, altered the page size here. When we go to File, we choose Print. What you might like, this one should be chosen by default, Auto Portrait Landscape. So right now, it'll just basically rotate your pages to best fit on the page. The other option you might like is either Fit or Shrink Oversized Pages. That will actually fit the page to your 8.5 by 11 page that you want to print. So I'm going to do cancel here, but those are the two big ones, fit or shrink oversized page, and then auto portrait landscape. All right, just a couple more things on this one that I want to point out. Now, it could be possible if you're giving these articles to your students or providing them as part of your course. You know, in the case of this one, the cover page is provided here showing the author and that sort of thing. However, if I just wanted to give the student page, whatever this is, I guess it says 39 down there, through this last page, page 80. I don't know if those numbers are right. You know, I could give them some more information on the pages that says what this is. So just an idea here. I don't know if this makes sense for you all or for everything, but where it says header and footer in the edit image in the edit toolbar, you can add a header and footer if there is not a header and footer currently. You can update the ones that are there, or you can remove existing ones. So in the case of this PDF, what I maybe would do is just say add a header and footer. When I do this, I see these text areas. So here's left header, center header, right header. So those would be on the top of the page. Left footer, center footer, right footer. So anything I put here will show up either in the top of the page or the bottom of the page. So, you know, I may say over here in the bottom left is just, I didn't catch who the, okay. Maybe just something like Jenkins, Smith, and then I don't know the year of this, but whatever the year is, something like that, since the page number is already there. So once I do that, I see a preview here, and that's looking okay. So then when I say okay, it'll just add that to all of my pages so that it's clear on any page of the PDF who the author is and what the year is. So it's not working out the best in this case because it's kind of overlapping with some of the footnotes, but I just wanted to point that out as an option. A big thing here, if I wanted to add a note and make it permanently part of this PDF, I could actually click up here and edit and, sorry, I should have clicked on add text. And I can actually just drag a text box and say important to remember XYZ. And just add some notes for my students that I want them to take away from reading this. So again, all of these options are from that edit PDF option, and these permanently, at least for this PDF, change the content of this PDF. As I'm in that edit menu, I get the secondary toolbar. To get out of here, I can do close. I could have also done the escape key. That would take me out of that PDF. So questions here as we look at just those kind of cropping, editing the text, adding headers and footers. If you feel like you got it, click that yes and we'll move on. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Perfect. Awesome. So just one more example here and then we'll pause for any last questions. So in the last example we have here, this is an example of an assignment that I just turned in actually, and we want to talk about leaving feedback. So in the previous example, we talked about editing PDF, and again, that's how you can permanently alter the PDF. In the case of this, where this assignment has been submitted, you may want to leave comments as the instructor. Comments are not necessarily permanent part. They don't become a permanent part of the content, but once you save them, they do appear in the document themselves. All of those commenting options, you can probably tell, are available under comment, and they provide a commenting toolbar at the top of the page. So there's a lot of different options here. Some ones I like. If you want them to both remove some text and substitute it with something else, I like this option. It strikes through and adds a note. So I could say something like for current values. Something like that. So basically we say remove this, add this. There's options here for highlighting, underlining. If I just wanted to say like, this is an interesting point, I could use this little, almost like a sticky note, post-it, and with that one you basically can click that and then click anywhere on the page and add another note. Now this interface has gotten updated even more recently, so once I add that note, I just click post and now it's part of this PDF. Again, I need to save in order to actually make that a true part of the PDF. So there's a lot of different options here. There's some, this one's kind of really a call out, so red text here. So up here we have, what is this called? Just text box. As you may see, all of these notes or comments are ordered in this comment panel. And that will just show you those there. So great question. Comments can also be added in Blackboard. Which method do you prefer? Any advantages over one method over the other? That's a good question. I am going to think about that for a second and show a few more options. I know we have some other instructors here in the meeting. I wanted to see if you all have feedback from your courses on whether to provide those comments in Blackboard versus in the PDF themselves. So the other option I want to just show here is an option that Tennille pointed out to me. I didn't actually know it existed. You can record an audio note here and just leave your comments that way. So when you do this, you have to have a microphone in order to record that audio, but it allows you just to record a little message that's then embedded into the PDF that the person can then press play to hear. So all really cool options under comments. And again, there's way more than even what we covered there as far as different ways to call out and point out text on the page. So going back to the Blackboard option, I'm going to check with our ed techs and see if they have any recommendations and leave that in the follow-up. I will say from my perspective, just as taking some master's classes, I kind of like to receive, what my instructors tend to do is to email either the Word doc in some cases or the PDF back to me with the comments in there. What I like about it is that they're able to point out very specific thoughts or ideas or comments where I could have done differently. I don't know in Blackboard if there is the ability to go and kind of reference a specific place. So that might just be a limitation of my knowledge. I do know I have had a professor in the past who has said that he wouldn't accept any assignments that was in the format of Word or Excel because of the possibility of getting a virus or something on his computer. So that could be something. But it could also be depending on the size of your class. If you had a huge class, it may be less prohibitive, or it might be prohibitive to download each assignment, make it into a PDF if it's not, and then comment in it. So I'll definitely follow up on that one. Something to think about I hadn't thought about. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have specifically within the area of commenting and editing and that sort of thing. I do have just some final tips here, and that's about scanning. So, you know, how do you get your documents into Acrobat? I will say that if you are scanning, so a lot of the options that we've had to look at, we've used scanned pages. I'm going to talk a little bit about images when we talk about scanning, but the ideal thing there is to make sure you're scanning your pages at least 300 dpi. That's usually the standard for printing. Sometimes people go up to 600 dpi. I've heard that anything over 300 isn't really an advantage, but you know, I would say up to 600 dpi is still in the realm of what people do. Now it is possible to scan from the multifunction device or the MFD that you have in your department. I just want to point out some nice features there. There should be the feature by default that once you sign in to that MFD and you use your KU online ID and password, Once you do that and you select scan, you should be able to select email. And what happens is once you scan that document, it should just email you the PDF, which I really like. If you're doing a lot of scanning, it could also be the possibility, and it may be already set up for you, or you may have to talk to your tech staff, but you can have them map a department drive or like a drive on the server so that when you scan, it goes directly to that location. So again, if you're doing a lot of scanning, that could be something that would pay off in the long run so that you're not dealing with a bunch of emails. It is possible to take pictures and import them into Adobe Acrobat. So you can do that, and I'll go back to Adobe and show some of those options. I do want to point out there is also a mobile app now called Adobe Scan. And you might have seen this. There's a bunch of mobile apps out there now aimed at kind of capturing documents and that sort of thing. Adobe Scan is Adobe's option, and it's meant to work well with Adobe Acrobat. So let me just switch back to Acrobat really quickly. So I do want to point out when we're talking about images, it is possible just to open images, and I'm not going to have the right images. If they're TIFF files or something like that, you can open images directly from Acrobat. And I'm not going to have a good option here, but let me just try something. So I'm just going to insert a blank page. At the beginning. You know, when we're talking about images, if the image is already a part of the scan, and I don't really have anything on here, the option I would first recommend if the image is part of the scan is to say enhance and use that option. This is where you can also say enhance, and you can bring in a camera image. What this allows you to do is, like, if this was something that I had taken a picture of and it wasn't quite straight or something like that, I could edit it here, and that would just allow me to kind of like remove any kind of skewing or something that's happening on the page. So sorry, I didn't have a really good practice file set up for that. But those would be the options I would say for images. The other option you could do is if that image is available under Edit PDF, you can add an image. So when I say add an image, I can just select that image. So maybe I have a better file that's a digital file, and I can just put it right there on the page. That could be another option to give yourself a cleaner image for your documents. I'll do a little bit more research too and see if I can find any other recommendations from Adobe. Finally, you know, if we are talking about scans and we're talking about journal articles, another option would be, you know, go out to the library's website and see if you can search for and download a more current digital copy of the PDF. So, you know, what could be even better than taking a scan, enhancing it, trying to recognize the text would be to actually locate that digital version of that article or resource. So we'll pause for any last questions there. Just wanted to point out questions about using Adobe Acrobat DC. Me and my team are available. We're all pretty well versed in Adobe Acrobat. And we just got a comment about, you know, possibly needing assistance formatting a PDF. Definitely can work with you one-on-one with those files, either in person or through Skype for Business. If you have questions about just how to get the software, installing it, that sort of thing, that's where your local tech support can really help out. They'll have the best information for you. After hours, you can always contact our customer support center. They basically will create a ticket, usually for your local tech support, where you can then your local tech support will get that when they get back into the office. I do want to point out, though, if you do have certain pages where, let me get rid of this. If you do have certain pages where, you have tables and things that are in different formats, it is possible just to select one page at a time over here in the page thumbnail view and just choose which pages you want to rotate. And so what happens with this is that as people are reading your PDF online, they're seeing everything in exactly the orientation they'd want to read in. Then when you come here to File and say Print, again, because of this auto portrait landscape, it'll just rotate your pages to fit, and I need to say all. It'll just rotate your pages so that it fits every page however it best will fit when printed. So those might be helpful too. Oh. Let me stop this for a sec. Get this here. Okay. Okay, let me share my screen again. Oh, okay, cool. So Connor sent this one. I'm going to come here first. So this is just a picture taken with a smartphone or something like that. I'm going to come here to Enhance Scans. I'm going to come up here to Enhance. I'm going to choose a camera image. And so you can see it already recognized where those page edges are. So great that you had that. And then when I say Enhance Page, it should just reorder things for me. All right, perfect. Well, not quite perfect. I want to rotate. I have rotation options up here too. So I can rotate this way. And then finally, none of this text is selectable or recognizable. So I could come here and I could say recognize text in this file. And what that should do then is make everything so that I could select it, possibly even copy and paste it. Yep. Cool, thanks, Connor. So that's pretty much where our webinar ends. I'll stick around for any last questions. If you need to get on the road for lunch, I don't blame you. So you're welcome to sign off as well. But thank you all for coming to today's webinar.